Hi, everybody. Welcome to My Other's Keeper. I'm here with my friend Pamela. She was on earlier and she talked a lot about the mental health issues that her entire family history has uh, been dealing with her entire life. And so today we are going to go from her time in college to as close to the present as she's able to get to within, say, an hour or so. So we're not going to do a huge deep dive. That might be too much. I don't know. But then again, like she says, once she starts talking, it's tough to stop. Like
Yeah.
me.
And again, it
She and I are
could,
very
I could dally through college and young adulthood, or it might be a speed run. I don't know.
that's right. Absolutely.
So,
Yes. Yes. And my friend Crystal, some of you know who Crystal is. She's here in the room with me as well. And when Crystal started telling her story, Pamela, you should probably go back. I have a playlist that is Crystal, and it tells
okay.
her story of what she's been through. And when she first started telling her story, it was very painful for her.
Mhm.
It's not something that she was easily able to do. It helped a lot that she and I have a personal history. Like the one of the brothers who assaulted her, I dated him and he had assaulted me
Oh,
as well.
oh,
So,
wow.
I mean, like it's just she and I have a really good shared history, so that really helped.
Mhm.
But something that she and I were discussing even just earlier today is the more you talk about it, the more you can actually feel it without feeling it.
Yeah.
You can get into it without feeling so overwhelmed.
Mhm.
So for you, telling your story can be as much or as little. Please, as much or as little as you like,
Okay.
because we aren't here for sensationalism. We're here to inform and educate and to love. So we're going to sit here and love on you.
Thank you.
So, oh, and Mary's here. She says hello.
Hi, Mary. Yeah, I can't
Hi,
see the
Mary.
chat this time. Or I think
Oh,
last
okay.
time I had to do something special, which might be.
uh,
Yeah, let me try this. Because I can't. My vision is not good right now either.
mm,
I've been
hmm
having headaches and all kinds of fun things going on in the last few weeks. So,
yeah, yeah.
um, let me see if here we go. And there are a couple of heavy lives already going on at the same time, so we might
hmm
not have a whole lot of
yeah.
people joining us. But oops, let me mute
We get a
that.
lot of
So,
people on the replay on the
yeah.
replay crew. So hello,
Mhm.
replay crew. If I could only spit it out.
Yes. Okay. Hi, Crystal, and hi, Mary. I see you guys up there now. So I can't watch that though because it's behind what we're doing.
Exactly. Yep.
There's a delay, but at least I can see the chat up on my TV.
Yeah, it's like a 5-second delay or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So take us back to a slight recap of what we talked about last month. We talked.
uh, yeah, we had talked about how I grew up in Phoenix,
Hmm.
um, and how my father had passed when I was 4 years old,
Hmm.
and actually last Tuesday was the
Hmm.
50th year.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
wow.
So, yeah, there was
My
that.
heart goes to you, my friend.
Thank you. Um, and that hit a little harder this year, that I
Oh,
think.
certainly. That's a big number.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, yeah, there was that, and then let's see about how my dad's death affected my mom, and then subsequently me and my brother,
Hmm.
and how my grandmother came to get us, and she raised us from the time we were about 7 and 8 to
Hmm.
my brother had stayed there until he was about 16, and then he went back to Arizona to live with my mom. I don't know if I'd
Okay.
mentioned that, but I'd stayed with her. And let's see, through that, and my uncle and
Hmm.
his mental health and drug problems. And what am I
And your
missing?
uncle had schizophrenia, correct?
And schizophrenia, yeah.
Yeah.
and
Is
it's
he still
likely that
alive?
no, he's not. He
Okay. I don't.
died.
Okay. I didn't
Yeah,
recall.
yeah.
Okay.
So, let's see. What am I missing? I'm sure I'm missing something. I'm
Um,
just kind of skimming.
you had a good friend. Oh, that's the college part. You have had a good friend named Kim,
Yeah,
but that's
that
coming up
was,
yet.
yeah.
Um, you had a stepdad who was a little overbearing, and
Well, he was just, he wanted to be hands off, and so we let him. But
fair.
when he did
Oh,
try to
okay.
get involved,
It was just
he and I were gas and fire. And I was a kid. I was
ah,
a little kid. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
So we have Jaden and Brian joined us as well. Hi, guys.
hi. Hi, Brian. And I think I missed Jaden.
Jaden is a new
Welcome.
subscriber, so welcome, my
Okay.
friend.
Nice to
Yes,
meet you, Jaden. And so sorry if my brain's a little scattered. That's
that's
just kind of
okay.
how I'm functioning lately.
That's fair. I have
Yeah.
had those days.
So yeah, growing up, we were raised in the Seventh Day Adventist Church and went to elementary school, and for me, all of high school and some college in the Adventist educational system. My brother, when he left to go live with my mom, went to public school in Arizona.
Hmm.
And that pretty much chronologically, I know I'm missing some events and things that I talked about, but
That's
that
okay. Yep,
chronologically brings us up to where we left off.
yep.
And so,
If people want more information and more detail, please go back to our part
yeah.
one.
Hmm.
And it's she really opens up. Pamela just bears her soul. So, as you're watching, keep in mind and be respectful. And it's the same with tonight. We're going to bear in mind and keep respectful that some of the things we're going to talk about are very difficult. Difficult for her to speak about, sometimes very difficult for people to hear. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. And so, yeah, after I graduated high school, I went straight to, it was La Sierra Academy, which is, I guess at this time now, it is the Seventh Day Adventist school in
Hmm.
Riverside, California. And
Mm.
then it was like right down the street from La Sierra University, which used to be part of Loma Linda University.
Okay.
Um, it was world known renowned back in I want to say 87, 88, because that was, I don't know if you remember seeing in the news about baby Faye,
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
baby who received a baboon heart.
Hmm.
That was Loma Linda that did that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
Wow. And how did the baby grow up? Was she okay?
I'll come get it later. I'm sorry, what?
That's okay. How did baby Faye end up? Did she grow up okay?
No.
Oh, no.
She pretty much, they knew she wasn't going to have a chance, and this particular
Mm.
pediatric heart surgeon wanted to try, and
Hmm.
so she was kind of an experiment. And I can't even, I'd have to look it up to see how much time they bought her, but it wasn't
Mm.
much and it wasn't quality.
Oh.
So but her family, they, I don't know, I kind of would like to, I wish I could find my old research paper, because for high school, for my senior year, that's what I wrote my English research paper on.
Oh, okay.
If that's a little insight
Very
again
good
into
topic.
how my brain works. So
Yeah.
um and I don't remember a darn thing about what I said in it, because I mean that's been 40, almost 35 years or so now.
It's
But
not allowed to be that long ago, is it? I mean, gracious,
I
we look
know,
darn
yeah.
good for our 50s.
Yeah, we
I mean,
do. And it's
look at this. All natural, duck
right.
fuzz, but still it's natural color.
It's,
It's all
yeah.
good. Yeah.
Hmm. So, yeah, I don't remember now, but it would be kind of interesting if I could get my hands on it. It was done on a typewriter.
Yeah.
I'll never see it again, but
Um,
kind of see what my thoughts were on it then, and then do some research now about it and see where I stand now. I think at the time I thought it was a move, it was an effort to move science forward. I don't think I believe that anymore because, well, they never tried to
mm,
do it again. Um,
yeah, there is that.
I'm sure they learned some things, and I think one of those I'm hoping was don't do that. Um,
Yeah, cross
because
species integration is very, very tenuous. I mean,
it's tenuous when it's within the species, especially with
hmm
neonatal heart transplants.
oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, um, that's something I hadn't thought about for a long time. But yeah, I figured if you'd
Hmm.
heard of Baby Faye, you knew something about Loma Linda. And there were some other major world known cases of children or infants
Hmm.
needing heart transplants, and Loma Linda at that time was the place to go. And to
Okay.
this day, in the children's hospital, they've redone it a couple of times since then, but there's a wall where it's a photograph of the surgeon, and I can't think of his name right now, and all of the babies as children, the ones that
Wow.
he has saved with his work. And he's done great work. He's done
That's
amazing
awesome.
work.
That's awesome.
But yeah, he kicked up some serious dust with Baby Faye.
Oh,
So
for sure. Yeah.
uh, yeah, that was interesting. Um, but so I graduated from La Sierra Academy, and I
Hmm.
did well in high school.
Good.
In retrospect, especially considering the fact that I had diagnosed ADHD.
Yep.
It was almost photographic memory. I would be
Wow.
sitting down and, I would take a math test, or if it was math or language, easy peasy.
Hmm.
If I couldn't remember something, I could literally close my eyes and visualize the page. It was almost like taking an open book test sometimes. I could visualize the page and see where the information was and
Wow.
kind of figure it out. And so, I could have been, if I'd actually studied, probably a straight A student. But
Yeah, if you actually read the books so you could open them in your mind. Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
What if I'd actually, memorized the material like I was supposed to? So
Well, there's that.
I,
Yeah.
um, as it was, I think I graduated with like a 3.5 or something. And as far as I was concerned,
Still very respectable.
that was good enough. Everybody else
Mhm.
around me was struggling. My aunt was in it at the university graduating, or I think she had graduated at this
Mm.
point, but I watched her struggle as she was going through the university to get papers done
Mhm.
and things like that.
Yeah.
And so my grandmother's, a lot of focus was on her. And then my brother, younger than me, and my half sister, older than me, um, were basically just floundering in school. And I think I thought, to make myself stand out, I would, well, let me do the almost best that I can and get good grades. And it was sort of like, oh, well, she's fine. Nobody needs to worry about her.
That's
She's
right.
got this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yay. Middle
That's
child. Yay. It's so
a
cool.
little bit what I was like. Yeah.
Yeah.
My parents and my sister were so focused on that little dysfunctional circle that
Hmm.
I kind of got ignored because I was doing, to all accounts, I was doing quite well.
Right. Right.
So why pay attention, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then I went on to well, at the time it was Loma Linda University, La Sierra campus.
Hmm.
The two schools were sisters,
Mm.
basically.
Hmm.
And the
Okay.
usual flow was you would go over to the La Sierra campus and you would get your bachelor's degree, or get your first 2 years of towards a bachelor's degree, and then you would
Hmm.
transfer over to Loma Linda to either become a doctor
Mm.
or a nurse or something in allied health, because that's
Okay.
basically what their main focus was. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's sort of like La Sierra was the undergrad part, and
The
then
feeding school.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then there was a big rift between the two campuses. Loma Linda wanted to
Uh-oh.
sell off most of or all of La Sierra University when I got
Oops.
there. And so
Oh no.
there was actually kind of a battle going on. And what
Yeah.
happened ultimately was the community,
Hmm.
because they were going to sell it off for development.
They weren't even just trying to get rid of the buildings or anything.
No, no. Yeah, their intention was to sell it off for development to make money for them in Loma Linda, and that would have killed that
Mm,
community.
would it ever?
And so the community stood up, and it was called the Friends of La Sierra. Yeah, I think just Friends of La Sierra at the time.
Okay.
And so I was there between 88 and 94 when it all went down with the separation of the two colleges, because they split. They wound up just splitting.
Yeah.
And so the La Sierra campus became its own La Sierra University. And then Loma Linda had to scramble to come up with its own undergrad program because it didn't have
Oh,
one.
for sure.
It was kind of
Yeah.
wild. And ultimately, guess what? La Sierra University is still there, but they sold most of the land, all of the agricultural land and stuff. And there's housing developments and shops. And when I have to drive out there, I'm like, I don't even recognize this place. I have to use
Hmm.
GPS to get through a place that I used to roam freely as a child.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was just really odd. But that was kind of one of the first times I really got to see how communities could come together
Yeah.
in action and to make a
Take
difference in
care of
their
each other
community.
and
Yeah, because they saved that school.
yeah.
And while I was at La Sierra University, initially I was a psychology major.
Hmm.
I wonder why I would choose that. Um,
No clue. No.
and that only lasted about a year.
Mm.
And then I made some friends that were actually in the communications programs.
Mm.
And one of them was she had started writing for the campus newspaper. And she and I are still friends to this day. I love her. We were born 2 days apart.
Nice.
And she said, "Hey, Sherry, who's the editor at that time, she said Sherry needs some more writers. It's really just me and Sherry trying to write all the articles. You want to come and check it
Hmm.
out?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And so, she sent us out on a story, and we wrote it together and turned it in. And she said, "You guys are really, really good." And so she started giving us little assignments here and there. And then I think we both initially started helping out with editing. I think for my friend JV, the editing part wasn't as much fun as the going
Hmm.
out and getting the story. I mean, we went to City Hall when they finally caught a serial killer we had here in
Oh,
Riverside. We went down to the
whoa.
press conference.
Riverside Strangler, is that right?
Yeah, Riverside, California. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
this was the one he was active in the 80s and
Yeah.
early 90s, and he would find prostitutes over by University of Riverside and that area, pick them up,
Hmm.
kill them, and then leave them. Either we had tons of orange groves back then in Riverside. He'd leave them in the
Wow.
orange groves, and that's where one of his last victims was found. And William Suff was his name. And then some of the lakes further south in Riverside County. And yeah, he was something else. And that was one of the
Yeah.
first times where I was kind of shocked. I'm like, I've lived here all of this time, and this man has been active all of this time. And when I went to work at the courts, I found out he had been a court employee, and not a court employee, but a county employee. And one of my coworkers knew him. He had tried to court her.
Oh my.
She had this little, you remember the little rock garden things, or the little where they'd have a rock with a bunch of little small painted rocks on top? She had one
Yeah.
and it said rock concert. Yes, it was
Yes.
supposed to be a bunch of little, yeah.
Yeah.
So she points, you want to know who gave that to me? And I was like, yeah, who? She was like, Bill Suff. And I'm like, who's that? And then she tells me, and I'm like, wait, whoa.
And you kept it.
And she kept it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
um,
Yeah.
just yeah, that was an interesting thing, just knowing that that was
Mhm.
going on in my community the whole time I'd lived here, and
Mhm.
finally getting to see him caught. And ironically, later on, I would be going to become a deputy clerk of the Riverside Superior Court
Yes, yes.
and
Just before
become
you went
very
to nursing school.
familiar with the room where we kept all of his exhibits. It had its own room.
That many exhibits.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So yeah, that was wild. But that was, yeah, just one experience.
Mhm.
Interesting experience. But I kind of got more into the journalism aspect, and so by my second year I changed majors to communications with an emphasis on journalism and public
Mhm.
relations,
Okay.
and didn't finish because ADHD, I discovered, I'm sure you've discovered, that what worked for us in high school and elementary school didn't
Doesn't
translate
work in
well
college.
to
No.
college. And
Yeah.
I was like stunned, and there was nobody around to explain to me why I wasn't doing well. Um, Everybody loved me. When I could get assignments completed, I did do well.
Mhm.
But I, yeah, I struggled.
Yeah.
I didn't want to give up. And so I struggled
No.
for 5 years,
Wow. You
racked
stuck
up
to
some
it.
debt. I really did. I really
Yeah.
tried. And I think
Yeah.
I'm not even sure why. I think at one point it was kind of becoming, well, I told them I was going to do this. My aunt was the first person in our family to go to and
Mm.
complete college.
Mhm.
And I wanted to be like her. She was my big
Yeah.
sister. She was my role
Yeah.
model. And I was devastated when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to pull it off the way I thought I could.
Were you from a family or a community who put people who went to university on a pedestal?
The Adventist Church? Why, yes, yeah.
Okay. Why, yes, yes, it is.
Yeah, it wasn't
Okay.
necessarily my family, but most definitely the church.
Definitely peer
Um,
pressure around
mhm.
the whole.
Especially
Okay.
being in a hub where we had we were sandwiched between two Adventist universities.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I
like
have 2
everybody I
daughters who went
knew.
to college, went to university.
Hmm.
One, has done exceedingly well, and um, she is doing research with one of her profs,
Hmm.
and the other one with ADHD was not able to hold on to a thought long enough to put it properly on a piece of paper.
Hmm.
And, yeah, can you hear the fan going?
No.
No? Okay, good. We're good.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, to hold a coherent thought onto a piece of paper was super difficult for her. Whereas in high
Hmm.
school, like you said, the coping mechanisms just are different.
Right.
Whether it's age and hormones, or whether it's pressure, or whether it's,
Hmm.
you know, the college itself not giving the same type of accommodation that a high school would, or whatever,
Right.
you know.
Hmm.
So learning and recognizing that success isn't always a university diploma,
Right.
like that's something that's important.
Hmm. And for a long time, I felt like a failure because I couldn't cut it there.
Makes sense.
And friends that I had made that I wanted to stay in touch with, they had gotten their degrees and went on and
Mhm.
started doing big things, and I went to a
Mhm.
temp agency. And
Yeah.
So for a long time, people would say, "Hey, let's get." I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I can't." Because the worst question you could ask me at that time is, "What are you up to these days?"
Hmm.
And to say that, well, I'm a temp working in the basement of the courthouse, filing documents away,
Yeah.
while this one is
It's
going
not.
on to, you know,
Yeah.
well, I'm taking my psych classes now so I can become a licensed psychiatrist or psychologist, or, you
Hmm.
know, I finished my nursing degree and I'm starting my internship and things like that. And I was just,
Hmm.
it hurt.
And it would really do a number on your self-esteem too.
Oh, yeah. And it did. It
Yeah.
really did. Um, I for a long time lived with, and with ADHD, we kind of have that on a daily basis. We could start something in
Yes.
the morning and then forget it exists by the afternoon. But
Oh,
for
it took
me,
all
this was,
afternoon.
yeah, this
Wow.
could be,
Minutes.
this was more of a global, you can't finish what you start. Anything, big or small, you just can't. So don't bother. And
Yeah. And you
yeah.
become known for it.
hmm I had
Hmm.
accepted it as part of myself.
Absolutely. Yep. I recognize that very well.
Yeah. So, but I fell into a very deep depression, and this would have been marked the second time that I thought about
Hmm.
leaving this world.
Hmm.
So, and
Yeah.
that was I'm trying to do some math because I'm getting bad at it. 90 94, so 30 years ago.
Yeah. That's almost exactly 30 years. Actually, it is. It's not okay that
Yeah.
that's 30 years ago.
No. I mean, I'm glad it's that far away from me now, but at the
Yes.
same time,
Yes.
no, not like that. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, I went to a very, very dark place, and what saved me at that time
Yes.
was my aunt. She had had
Mm,
her first child, and to keep me busy, my grandmother would pick her up and bring her over, and I would watch her. My aunt was also pregnant at the time and working on her master's degree. So here we
oh my
are, the one that
goodness.
can't finish anything, and then the one that just keeps going.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah.
so,
Overachiever much.
well, I mean, she wanted something, and I think for her, she felt she was supposed to. She had
Mm,
gotten her bachelor's in a program that she grew to hate, and actually never she her bachelor's was in speech pathology,
okay.
and by the time she finished, she didn't want to have anything to do with it. So I think she felt like she needed to make something of it, and so she went
Yes.
back and got her
Right.
master's in hospital administration.
Oh, okay.
So
So she must have felt a lot of pressure as well. Like,
I
first of
think
all,
hers was
inside, like,
self-imposed. Yeah, because
yes.
here I
Yeah.
am. I went and got this degree. It's probably similar to me. I couldn't finish,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasted all this time and money. And she was like, "I did finish, but I've still wasted all the time and money because I hate it."
Right.
So she was able to finish her master's degree. She
Oh, good.
had um, my second her second child, and I basically was the nanny for her two children while she was finished up.
Okay.
And those
That's an
two kept
important
me
job.
on the planet.
Yes.
um,
It's amazing how kids can do that, right?
yeah. I don't
Yeah.
recommend running out and finding some specifically for that purpose. You really should try to find that in yourself. But if you're so low
Yeah.
that you can't even see,
Yeah. When
you
you
don't
can't see,
recognize, yeah,
when you reach up to look at the bottom of the tire tread, yeah.
yeah. hmm because being woken up in the morning by this tiny little person throwing their Barney stuffed animal at you and saying,
Hmm.
"Hi, Pam." Well, what else are you supposed to do but smile and get up?
That's right.
There's nothing else you can
Hi.
do. So,
Yeah.
I did that for, let's see, Stephen had started walking by the time I decided it was time to start looking for jobs. So I did that for probably a
Oh,
good year
okay.
and maybe a little longer. And so I went to Kelly Temporary Services.
Hmm.
I'd heard about my entire life. The commercial when I was a kid was like, "Call that girl, Kelly girl," and
Yeah,
the temporary
exactly.
runs
Yep,
in.
yep.
um, so my first assignment was at the courthouse. They
Oh,
had a they were trying to digitize all of their previous court records as well as the new ones as they were coming in, and
makes sense.
so they
Big job
hired a team of temporary employees
for sure. Yeah.
to do that, and we were responsible for basically archiving the old, scanning in the new documents, current documents, so that trying to get the judges to um, actually use the system. We It turned out they kind of had to wait for a lot of them to
Good
just die
luck.
off or retire.
Yeah.
But um, and and then we were responsible for making sure that the actual physical copies were filed away in the case files.
Hmm.
And the goal was for the courts. The state of California had this lofty goal of being completely paperless, I think by 20 or the year 2000 or something. That didn't happen. It still hasn't happened.
And it
So
probably won't ever because,
no.
yeah, they've found that you need physical copies at times of things.
Yeah.
It's just needed.
So I had worked there as a temp for about a year, and
Hmm.
I kind of say that's where I grew up because that was, me outside of the Adventism bubble, finally in
Hmm.
the real
Hmm.
world, learning how to talk to and interact with normal people.
Yeah.
And because, Adventism is a microcosm. And
Well, yeah.
in a
Any
lot of
Christian
ways, it's,
community really is.
yeah.
You Bibleese.
Yeah. And then, certain groups that lean a little too close to the cult side of things go beyond
Mm.
legalese, where you
Mhm.
were supposed to walk a certain way and talk a certain way and look a certain way and act a
Mhm.
certain way. And depending on, where you lived as an
Mhm.
Adventist would have more influence on things like that. Like my cousins in
Hmm.
Texas and my aunts, they didn't wear pants until I think the first time I saw my cousins in pants, I almost passed out. And that was probably like 20 years ago.
Wow.
It
Yeah.
just wasn't done. And
No.
diet and all of these things, all kinds of things. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know how to explain it without going really, really deep in the weeds. And
We'll do that one a different day.
yeah.
That's a
It's
different
just,
discussion for a different day.
you come out of there looking, walking, talking, and acting completely different from everybody else around you. And you've
Absolutely.
been told the whole time you were in there that you are in the world, but you are not of the world.
Yep. Yep.
And so, yeah, that's where I learned how to interact with actual people.
And find out
And
that the rest of the world isn't all evil.
right.
Like there are good people,
Hmm.
kind, loving, generous people
Hmm.
outside of your little bubble.
Right. And it did also help me
Mhm.
to see that there's also messed up people out here, but it's not everybody.
Yeah. No,
And
exactly. Yeah, that's
some
exactly
of the
right.
stuff that those messed up people, the supposed holy people, were doing those things too,
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. People
in the
everywhere are
name of
the same, but
Jesus.
people everyone, yep. Everywhere we're the same and everywhere we're different. It just
Hmm.
is the nature of humanity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was that. Um,
Mhm.
so I only had two serious relationships
Mhm.
around that time. and one didn't last very long. And I wouldn't even, I think emotionally it was serious, but there wasn't anything
Mhm.
else.
Yeah, okay.
And so, you know, he broke up with me. Well, he used the reason that I was distant. Well, yeah, and yeah, I was distant because I had just come for this. I didn't know he was also raised as Adventist. Actually, both of them
Mm,
were. Um,
okay.
but he he said I was too distant, and I didn't know how to open up and talk to people. That's not something that I had ever really been encouraged to do.
And
And
it was never modeled,
no, it was
right?
definitely wasn't.
Yeah, for sure.
And he was from Lebanon,
Oh my.
grew up
That's a whole nother
during
culture right
at
there.
right, and grew up during the worst of the wars, you know. Wouldn't know if he'd be able to go
Mm,
to school until they saw which roads had been bombed out overnight, things like that.
right.
And, you know, that's talk
Wow.
about trauma. I hope somebody's studying and trying to help people who live in situations like that learn to deal with it. Because what
Mhm.
happened, he lived on the Muslim side,
Mhm.
uh, and being Adventist, his parents worked and taught over on the Christian side. So they would have to traverse this daily.
Dangerous.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So um, seemed fairly adjusted somehow. I'm sure there's things going
Huh.
on in the background there that I didn't know about, but
So
I
likely.
don't know how you could be
Yeah.
how you could not wake up screaming a lot from growing up in a situation like that.
Yep.
But yeah, that major issue I had though was that his mom was she was racist,
Mm.
and he would say things like, "Well," would try to be really gentle about it, and like, "Well, you know, back home where we lived, you would actually probably be my mom's maid," and that's really all he had to say. I'm like,
That
"Oh,
doesn't
okay,
help. That's not
yeah."
that's not
No, he
helping here,
was.
buddy.
That was him trying to explain without saying, "She's gonna hate you,
Okay.
and she's gonna think
Oh.
that you're beneath us," and
Okay.
all of this stuff. So,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
he told me at one point that he had told her that we were in a relationship, and that she acted like she was going to have a heart attack and die and had to go to the hospital and all of this stuff. And I think at that point I was just like, I doubt this is going anywhere. And so that probably contributed
Oh
to me
yeah. I mean,
not being
that
a very
just is
open person. I'm like, why
yeah,
bother?
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, the second um I loved Reggie. I really did. But he came to me. He had already been deconstructing his faith
Hmm.
um,
Okay.
when we got together. And he had some ideas in his head. Like he didn't think he was going to live to be 40 years old. Could never really give us a
Wow.
reason why. And we kept trying to explain to him how self-fulfilling prophecies work, because if you don't believe
Yep.
you're going to live past the age of 35, you're going to treat yourself like you're not going to live past the age of
Exactly.
35. And that's what he
Yep.
did.
Yep.
While we were together, he was diagnosed with diabetes, and initially it could
Mm.
have been very easily treated with oral meds and a dietary
Mhm.
change.
Mhm.
I would call him on my lunch breaks just to see, what are you up to? How's things going? He was like, oh, guess what I just had for lunch? And I'd be like, what? And he'd say, oh, a can of Coke and two candy bars. And I'm just like, I don't understand why you're doing this.
Yeah. Like you said, self-fulfilling prophecy, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He took that and just ran with it to the
Oh,
point
for sure.
where,
Became an
um,
excuse.
yeah, I
Yeah.
I told him, I said, I'm not gonna just sit here and watch you destroy yourself. I can't do that.
Mhm.
Can you do
Mhm.
you expect me to be able to do that and just be okay with it? I can't. because I
Mhm.
know you know better. Your mom was a nurse. Your dad has diabetes, and you've seen what it has done to his body. Well, he's, in
Mhm.
his 80s, and we're like, well, he didn't fast track it,
That's
you
right.
know?
He may be in his
He,
80s now, but when he was in his 20s and 30s,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
He didn't hop on the bullet train to death. Like, and
Exactly.
sure enough, I broke up with him, and um, he continued on that path and went from needing oral medications to needing insulin and large amounts of insulin. And you're familiar
Mhm.
with how this can progress. Um,
Absolutely.
Kept going and going until he had his first stroke. I think he was, I don't think he had turned 50 yet. He was a year older
Wow.
than me. And yeah, had his first stroke. I think he was 48.
Mhm.
Wound up with renal failure. Initially, they had him on peritoneal dialysis, and that got to where it was not working, and they had to go into start doing renal dialysis.
Okay.
And then he had another major stroke, complete with aphasia and everything. And then in 2018,
Mhm.
18, nope, 2019, in that spring, his mother had breast cancer, and that
Mm.
May she passed away. And her Reggie's sister called me to let me know what had happened, and that I was at work at the time. She was going to We were going to connect the next day after I'd had some sleep, and
Right.
she was going to discuss the arrangements for their mom with me.
Mhm.
And that was a message she had left for me, and so I called her
And you were
back when
still
I knew.
dating Reggie at the time?
No, we had broken up at this
Oh, okay.
point, but
Okay. But
I was
still,
still in the family. Yeah,
that's
they
right.
would
Yeah.
always ask about me and tell him he was stupid and things like that.
Reggie, you're
And
an idiot.
his
Yeah.
sister always stayed in touch with me, and
Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah. So she had left that message at the beginning of my shift. So later I had texted her to let her know, I'm sorry, I just saw this. I'm so sorry about your mom. I will
Yeah.
give you a call tomorrow morning, after I've had some rest after my shift. And then she texted
Right.
me back, just like, please do, because something's changed. And so when she
Oh.
got a hold of me Saturday morning, she let me know that since she had sent me the first text about their mom, Reggie had coded while he was in his dialysis chair and was declared dead when they got him to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this was within 4 days they both passed.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's huge.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
was pretty rough.
Oh, for sure.
So, and there was things that I didn't know or understand prior to his death, around the time that his dad died.
Mhm.
Um, his dad, he had basically told me that he was an atheist, and
Mm.
didn't believe in God anymore. And I was okay with that as long as he didn't become one of those atheists that picked on or made fun of people who
Mock.
do still believe. Yeah.
That's
Because I
right.
don't,
Yeah.
it's not necessary. I,
Yeah.
I know there are Christians that make fun of atheists, and there's a back and forth. It's what humans do. That's fine. I'm not in that. I'm not a part of
No.
that. And
Yeah.
so when he died, I'm thinking he died without having returned
Mhm.
to Christ, and
Mhm.
didn't quite know how to process that until I found out from his wife that he met on a Filipino Christian dating site.
Okay.
His who
Mhm.
now? That he that he had actually
Oh,
come back to
okay.
Christianity. And
Okay.
I don't know how true that was, because I mean he'd never mentioned that
Mm,
to me.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seemed like,
And
you
like,
know,
how true was the atheism or how true was the return? Either way,
exactly.
there one wasn't quite as strong as
Hmm.
the other. Yeah.
Right, right. And a lot of the marriage kind of seemed weird to me, because they never lived together. She was and her son were still in the Philippines, and he was
Mm,
here in Los Angeles.
mm-hmm.
And I know he had gone out there to visit. And when she
Mm-hmm.
came here for the funeral, she was, 100% the grieving widow, but it just seemed, all
Yeah.
of it was just very weird to me. It was a
I
lot to
have to say
process.
it would be, yeah, yeah, for
It was
sure.
very, very weird. So, there was that. Um, so I kind of skipped over that. That was covered relationships. How I wound up
Yeah.
getting into nursing school was weird too. Everything. There's so many
I
things
love
where
this
I just
story though.
kind of
This is a
landed.
great story.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
tell.
in part, yeah. So, working at the courts, I
Yes.
built relationships with some of my coworkers, and one
Mm-hmm.
was my friend Linda,
Mm-hmm.
who it turned out she and I had grown up on the same street, right? And when
That's
she
awesome.
left her parents' house,
Mm-hmm.
and well, her parents divorced, her mom married and moved, with her new husband, and her dad stayed on our street.
Okay.
She had married a kid that my brother and I played with, that lived across the street. So she marries him, and they also get a house there on the street. So all this
Okay.
time, we're all living on the same street, and I knew her
Just
husband when we were kids, but I
just
didn't even know he was there
passing and
anymore. Yeah.
yeah.
And
Oh wow.
it was odd. She and I were talking about it when it was Christmas Eve. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we'd stayed late after work because we were trying to get some stuff finished up, and we were talking about how we both had some Christmas shopping that we wanted to do, but we didn't want to get caught up in crowds. And I said, well, the Walmart over in Van Buren's still open. um, I think at the time it was 24 hours. And she's like, oh, I didn't realize
Mm.
that. She's like, we'll just I like to go late when nobody else is there, and blah blah blah. And what we decided is, like, why don't we, she said, my kids are with their dad, why don't we go and get something to eat and just kind of decompress here for a little bit? I'm like, yeah, sure. And
Mm-hmm.
we did. And I didn't usually do things like that. Everything was either planned
Mm.
or, sorry, I
Okay.
can't do that. But for some reason, something said, you know what, hang out with Linda tonight. And I did. And we got to know each other really well. And that's where we learned how we had lived in the same
Sphere.
sphere for
Yeah.
years.
Oh
And
yeah.
she
That's
was my age.
awesome.
She was, like, I think, a year
Yeah.
older than me. Yeah. And
Nice.
it was just wild. And I didn't live there anymore, but my mom did, and her dad lived right next door to my mom.
Love it. Oh, Pamela,
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's even more
yeah,
fun than your leaving work story. Yep.
yeah. Well, in between Christmas Eve and my leaving work story,
Mm-hmm.
um, so that was Christmas Eve. We, yeah, grabbed a little dinner and talked and really got to know each other. And we said
Mm-hmm.
we've got to do something like this again.
Oh, for
And
sure.
we, because we had really connected. And she and I,
Yeah.
we would always laugh and joke and talk and stuff at work. I liked to go by her desk and do silly stuff, because she had one of the worst jobs. I was her senior, and
Mm-hmm.
she, well, I won't say it was one of the worst, but it was a tough job, and that was getting together everything that the judges needed in order to hear their cases
Oh,
on their
yeah.
calendars. That making sure all the documents for that particular hearing are in the case file, And each judge
Okay.
wanted everything done a certain way. There was one judge who seemed to hide stuff from us, so we couldn't find it. So we're like searching for files, and they're right there buried in his chambers. I got in
Yep.
trouble with the supervisor for calling it the black hole. Um,
Oops.
like, hey, can you
Yeah,
find anything?
that's right.
But we can't call it the hay. I'm never saying it to his face.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
So, I've always been a little irreverent. If you see some ears, this is Hazelnut. She's
Oh,
our
hello,
old girl, and
Hazelnut. What a pretty
she's
kitty.
not doing great, but
Oh, I hear
she's
some
hanging in
purring.
there. Yeah. Oh, you too?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do.
Hi. Okay. She
She looks
doesn't
so
like a
soft.
whole lot of attention. She
Oh,
is,
okay.
yeah. She is probably about the same age as Finn, my daughter. So
Wow.
she's about 16, 15,
Wow.
16 years old. Yeah. So
That's impressive.
we're just enjoying every moment we have with her now. So,
Yep.
but she's winding down. I'm having trouble getting her to eat today, actually. So,
Oh,
um,
okay.
yeah. But, yeah. So I loved Linda. And so, that, well, 1 week later, she and another coworker were leaving a New Year's Eve party,
Mm-hmm.
and they were in a horrible accident.
Oh, yep.
Linda had insisted that Dolores drive her home because she wanted to leave something, I guess, had happened at the party that upset her. I was never clear
Mm,
on what it was, and
right.
this is how I operate. If she wanted me to know about it, she would have
She would
told
tell
me.
you.
And
That's
I,
right.
I never pried about that, but I'd hear rumors and well, I heard it was this, and like, well, I don't care what you heard because she hasn't told me that. And
Right.
if she doesn't feel I need to know it, I don't need to
That's a
know it to
good
keep
friend,
loving her.
actually, to have that kind of attitude. That's a very
Yeah.
good friend.
Because
Yeah,
what is that knowledge going to do for me?
exactly. Yeah.
If she felt she needed me to help her with something regarding that, she would have told me. So
Yep.
I didn't, I never pressed. I never do. That's just not how I roll, which is, it makes life interesting because I get really confused by the behavior and actions and words of a lot of other people because I'm like, but
Mm-hmm.
why is that? What does that have to do with you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Why do you need to know that?
Yeah.
So anyway, she wanted to leave the party. Dolores didn't feel ready to drive because she had been drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And but Linda insisted, so they left. And I guess at some point started out as a single vehicle accident where it was mild, nobody had been hurt.
Right.
The car was just disabled. And then a police officer came along and was doing a field sobriety on Dolores. Linda was asleep in the
Mm-hmm.
car in the front passenger seat. So Dolores gets out, the door of the car is still open. They're on the median in between
Yeah.
the road, in the middle of the road, on the
Mm-hmm.
median doing this field sobriety.
That's not very safe.
No, I think he was like a rookie or something. He wasn't very,
Yeah. Not
everybody got
terribly
hurt.
bright.
So
Yeah.
another woman came along with, I think her small dog was loose in the car, or she was in a van actually,
Mm.
and she says the dog got under her foot,
Oops.
but wasn't able to stop when she saw them and just plowed right into the back of the car. So outside the car, that open door and the car hit Dolores and the cop, send them flying. And then the impact shoved Linda. She's reclined in the passenger seat with a seatbelt on, but she went under and flipped. And so she had two spinal cord injuries. So she kind of slid down and then like folded. So she
Oh,
had cervical
wow.
spinal cord injuries, which were
Right.
incomplete, meaning
Okay.
it
Not
wasn't
all the way to the
completely
cord.
severed there. Right.
Right.
But the one in her lumbar was all the way to the cord.
Mm.
So, yeah. In the meantime, just a few days before, that house that was right next door to her dad's house where my mom lived, there
Mhm.
had been a fire. Kenneth was still alive at that time. They think
Mhm.
that he dropped a cigarette butt in the backyard,
Mm.
and there was a wooden deck with space underneath that. Even as a kid, I remember thinking that just doesn't seem safe because there's all these dried leaves and things underneath. And yeah,
Yeah.
dropped a cigarette butt and it just went
And it
off in
just
flames.
smoldered. Yeah.
Hmm. And then raced through the house. So that New Year's Day, I spent with my aunt going through this soggy house after they'd put the fire out, trying to do an inventory of what was destroyed. And we just
Mhm.
basically said, I just total it. It's everything. It's how do you put a
Yeah.
value on my entire child is charcoal now. And so I had gotten home from that experience and I was devastated. Everybody got out okay, even the cats.
Good.
One kitty
Oh,
needed
good.
a little oxygen, but everybody came out okay. So I'm
Well, that's good.
devastated, and then my phone rings and I answer, and it's another
Mhm.
coworker saying, "Do you have any news on Linda or Dolores?" And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Oh, I thought you would know something." And I said, "Please tell me what you're talking about." And they were both in a horrible accident. Linda was taken to Riverside Community, and Dolores was taken to another hospital a little further away. And I just lost it and hung up on her.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
I'm like, how much am I supposed to process? And this is kind of the story of my adult life, is being
For
thrown
sure.
a triad of horrible things that I have to deal with all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's at least two or
Absolutely.
three. So, um,
Wow.
I didn't get um, any more information until I returned to work. The
Mhm.
supervisor kind of called us all together that first day and told us what had happened, and uh,
Mhm.
that was a rough day. I don't even really remember how much work I got done. I don't remember if I even stayed. I have no idea. I couldn't tell
Yeah.
you. Um, but I would always ask the family, or ask, when will we be able to see her?
Yeah.
I don't know. It had been probably, she was still in the ICU, but one day I just said, I have to see her. And I think at this point I had made contact with her mom, but a big part of me thinks I just went over there and said, I'm here to see Linda. What's your relationship? She's my cousin. And if you put us together, depending on who I'm standing with, you can't sometimes make out what my background is.
Fair.
So,
Yeah.
and I walk in there and I spoke enough Spanish to sound like a Gonzalez. So I was a Gonzalez when I got to the
Yeah.
hospital.
Yeah.
And
I could mistake you for Filipino pretty easily, I think,
yeah, I've heard
in
that
in
too
your
from
looks. Yeah.
Filipinos. So
Yes. Yeah.
I even actually once had a Filipino couple walk up to me, started speaking Spanish, and I found that very confusing. But
Yep.
um, but I got up there, and I think it was, I want to say it was one of her cousins. Again, a lot of the memory is foggy. I could tell
Mhm.
you for sure that her nurse was someone I knew. It was another good friend's brother was actually her nurse that night.
Wow.
And so I get up there and he's like, let me just check with the family and make sure. And they were okay with it. And so they let me go in and visit her. And that was rough. She was no longer intubated, but she did have a trach and was
Mhm.
getting oxygen with the trach. Um,
Mhm.
she couldn't talk, of course, but she was awake enough to know she was aware that I was there and things
So
like
she was
that.
coherent to an extent.
Yeah, yeah, I think they were starting to back her off of the meds.
Okay.
And so it wasn't long after that, her mom had called me a few days later and said, she's been transferred to another floor. This is what room she's in, and blah, blah, blah. And so I visited her frequently.
Hmm.
I was Linda's cousin. Try to tell me I'm not.
Hmm. That's right. Heck, I
And
could be her cousin. Doesn't
exactly.
matter, you
Yeah.
know?
And so I went in and I saw my cousin Lou. I went in, I saw her basically every day after work. I lived
Hmm.
downtown, we worked downtown, and the hospital was downtown.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, why do you keep coming to see me every night? Well, isn't there something you could be doing? I'm like, I don't have any kids. I fed the cats. Um, all I'm gonna do is sit over and watch reruns of this of Star Trek: The Next Generation. You're gonna
Hmm.
sit over here and watch reruns of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Do
Why
it
don't I just come over
together.
here and watch with you? She's like, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
And so,
that's a good friend. That's a really good
yeah,
friend.
I mean, it was kind of, I didn't know what else to do. I felt helpless, and
But
I
sometimes
wanted to do
just sitting
something.
with somebody,
Yeah.
sometimes just that sitting is enough, right?
Hmm.
Your physical
Yeah.
presence is wonderful. You're a good friend, Pamela.
I was just doing all I knew to do. But thanks.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
So she started slowly improving, and every time I would see something I considered a gain, I would cheer her on. And she's like, why is that even a big deal? That's not a big deal. Or she'd, I would stay when they were going to do some certain things. And I would ask Linda, do you mind if I stay? And she's like, why would you want to stay for that? It's gross. I'm like, she's just going to give you your meds. You're not swallowing them, they're going into the tube directly into your stomach, but I just want to see her do it. And she's like, I mean, if you want to, but it's just gross. She's mouthing these things because she still can't really
Mm.
talk. And then
Oh,
another
okay.
reason why I liked to be there is for her to communicate. They put a button next to her face where she could just turn her head to press the button that was her call button. Well, half
Oh,
the
okay.
time I would get there to visit, and the call button's pointing up at the ceiling. It's way somewhere where she
Oh,
can't reach, and I kind of started getting a little snippy about that. Um,
yeah, for
so I
sure.
like to. I just figured for the few hours that I'm here with you, at least I know you can communicate with somebody. You're not having to lay here and wait for somebody to come back.
That's right.
So, um, but yeah, I would observe while they were doing things for her, like giving her meds through her G tube, and I was actually watching and asking questions, and a couple of the nurses started saying things like, "Wow, you ask some really good questions. I think you'd be good at this." I'm like, "What? Me, a nurse? No, I'd have to take math."
And I can't do university. Look at me. I can't
Yeah,
complete anything,
I
right?
yeah. I mean, I'd
Yeah.
have to go to school for that. I can't do that. And later on, she was transferred to the rehabilitation unit at Loma Linda. I
Hmm.
remember the day that speech pathology was working with her, and she still had her trach, but they put a valve over it so that she could learn to talk again. And she called me. She called me while I was at work, and just everything just kind of stopped. Because they
Yeah.
transferred the call to me. I don't know if whoever took the call knew who they were transferring to me, but they transferred her
Oh.
to me at my desk. I was actually in the back counting receipts.
Okay.
And I was just so excited to hear, even if it was just a whisper, just to hear her voice again. And after that, we didn't really get a whole lot of work done. We closed the office. The clerk's office was closed, but I was just like, that was lit. And we were just so excited. So
Yes. What a
But
win.
yeah, that was amazing. And while she was at
Awesome.
Loma Linda, I saw her start to gain some movement in her neck and shoulders. And one morning she freaked me out because um, I had fallen asleep on they brought in like one of those chairs that opens up in the hospital
Mm,
rooms. I
mhm,
was had kind of fallen asleep over there while we were
mhm.
watching TV, and I hear this rustling sound, and I'm like, "What's that?" And I pop up, and she had brought her arm up and was rubbing her nose. And I said, "Lou,
Did she even realize she
look
was
at you."
doing it?
I don't even think so. Because before that, she would have to wake me up. If I slept over,
Yeah,
she would wake me up so that I could scratch her nose or
yeah.
help her readjust something. And this time I wake up to the sound of her. Her arm was kind of
Really?
tangled up in the sheet, but she rubbed her own nose. And she's like, "It's not a big deal." I said, "Are you kidding me? This is huge. This is something we didn't know you'd ever be able to do again. This is
Right.
amazing."
Yes.
And she was always, "Oh, don't make such a big deal about it." But so then I got to go from just being another body in the room to watch TV with to her cheerleader. And
Absolutely.
after that,
That's
it
an
was like every day
important.
she was giving me something to cheer about. She was amazing.
Yeah.
So I also got to explain to her why all the TVs in the unit turned off at the same time on Friday evenings. I said, "It's okay. You can turn it back on, but yeah, it'll go switch. All the channels switch to this worship station, and then poof, they go
Yep.
off."
Yep.
um, and yeah,
What a great job to have being that cheerleader, like
well, and
that
that's
had to
something that
feel so good.
it did, and I didn't realize that I was developing a skill at that time because that was something that I've
Well,
taken with
yeah.
me into nursing.
Yeah.
Um, I will celebrate any win. Your IV didn't blow. Yes.
If you have seen anything I've done with Samara, she will tell you that is a win. They have
Yeah.
blown, I think, every vessel in her body at some point or
Oh wow.
another. Yeah. Yep,
And
that's a
there's
win.
ways. If you see, a lot of times they're just doing what they would do for any other person, and they have to
Yep.
recognize at a certain point. Finn's grandmother's solution is, "I'll put it in the AC, but I'm using an 18, and that's not going to collapse."
Mm.
But they want to go
See
in because they're
what
trying to
that
be
means?
gentle. The gauge
Oh,
is the size of the needle. So if you go in with a cute little,
right.
are you familiar with the butterflies where it has like the
Yes.
little? Okay, so
Yep.
if you go in there with a cute little blue one or a cute little pink one, wait, blue or green, those are the smaller ones.
That's what they use on me is the green one.
Okay.
And this
The
is what happened.
Yeah.
This lovely little,
Oh wow.
yeah.
And so that can be avoided too.
Yeah.
I wish I could teach everybody. And all I did was watch YouTube videos. There's a lot of really good
Yeah.
nursing YouTube videos where they show you how to do things the
Wow.
best way and in different situations because not all veins are the same. Just like the people that have the veins are not the same.
Yep.
But anyway, but
Anyway.
yeah, um, celebrating the wins was important. We had hoped that with adaptive equipment and things like that, once she had reached her peak in her recovery, that she might be able to come back to work. Um,
Mhm.
they didn't, yeah, nothing happened with that. So,
Oh,
and I don't know
that's
if
too bad.
it's just she didn't pursue it because there were things that she still could have done. But she
Mhm.
basically, she had no use of her hands. Um,
Mm.
she could, if once she put braces on her hands, she could control a powered chair and get around very well.
Mhm.
Um, let's see, Reggie had big dreams before we broke up of motorizing a bunch of stuff in her house so that to open doors for her
Mm.
and things like that. But he
Mhm.
ADHD. So he also bought a bunch of
Yeah.
lumber. He was going to make me this fantastic loft bed, and it all rotted in his backyard.
Oh no.
So,
Oops.
um, but um, yeah, she wound up. She wasn't happy not being able to go back to work. She dealt with a lot of depression and everything after that, of course, and
The trauma. The
right,
trauma would be
hmm
just horrific. Yeah,
right.
for sure.
And then when she reached a point in her recovery where she felt she didn't really need me right by her side all the time anymore, that kind of did a number on me. So,
Yeah.
and it was kind of around then that I realized, ooh, the last time I was happy, I was taking care of someone else.
Yeah.
And maybe I should look at this nursing thing and see if it is really something that I can do.
Yeah.
And so I went back first, and I was doing my general ed requirements over again because everything from La Sierra had, turned to dust.
Right.
At this point, it had been um,
It'd been a while.
over 10 years. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I did my general ed requirements, and then me starting to get impatient, I went ahead and applied, even though they said, well, they're not going to let you in the RN program unless you have all of your general ed requirements because it's just too competitive to get in there.
Fair.
And
Okay.
but somebody said apply for both the LVN program and the RN program. And
And
when you
the
apply for
LDN
the
is
licensed vocational nursing, so
LVN. Okay.
yeah, so in
Okay.
United States, we have LVN and LPN, the licensed practical
Yes.
nurse. That's what
Okay.
most states, and most people are familiar with that. In California, Texas, and I'm pretty sure it's one other state, but I can never remember, has LVNs, and they can actually do a bit more than LPNs can. Like LPNs,
Okay.
I don't believe can start IVs. LVNs can start and hang just basic saline with the
Hmm.
doctor's order, but they can't put any meds into it. So there's no IV meds.
So that'd be the RN doing
Yeah. And then, of course,
medical
with the RN, you
distribution.
have a whole lot more theory
Yeah.
and
Oh, yes, for sure.
additional practice, but they can pretty much do everything. I've seen some, I've known LVNs that could run circles around an RN with wound care and,
Oh, yes.
a lot of things. So,
Yep.
some RNs will look down on LVNs and LPNs, and I'm not one of them. I don't look down on CNAs. I don't look down on housekeeping because, and especially this was especially evident during the pandemic, is that
Hmm.
every single one of those bodies was needed in order to keep things flowing.
Yep.
As far as I'm concerned, having that floor cleaned in the patient's room was part of patient care.
Actually, I have said for many years, the most important person at the hospital is not the doctors, it's not the nurses, it's not the patients, it's the
Mm-hmm.
cleaning staff.
Yeah.
Because everybody else can do their job, but if it's not clean,
Mm-hmm.
nobody's getting better.
Yeah. And what they had to deal with during the pandemic,
Oh, it's just
their
awful.
exposure to chemicals
Oh,
that
yes.
we didn't know what it was going to do to people, but it was
Hmm.
necessary to make sure that we gotten the virus. They had
Yeah.
to irradiate the hospital room
Hmm.
after cleaning it from head to toe with toxic chemicals with
Hmm.
this massive UV light. They had to put special shades up to make sure that the UV light was kept in because this thing could have burned your retinas just by glancing at it. It was powerful.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's the kind of UV that will kill stuff.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's what you really needed.
Yeah, and the room,
So, whatever
it had to
happened
be
with Linda?
flooded. Well,
Yes.
ultimately, she passed. I think
Hmm.
not the year before Reggie did. I was.
Hmm.
I don't think I had finished school yet. or I had graduated and I didn't have my license, one of the two.
Mm.
She developed cervical cancer and
Oh
it
no.
metastasized, and because she just kind of stopped doing the things that we're supposed to do to
Yeah.
take care of ourselves because it was a little harder for her. She had to have, her stepdad take her to the gynecologist. Who wants to do that?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And just, people don't realize when you have a spinal cord injury or any disability, really, it
Hmm.
makes it harder to get the things done
Oh, for sure.
that.
Something, yeah. I did an interview toward the beginning of my channel with a guy by the name of Matt.
Mhm,
He has schizophrenia and he also is a quadriplegic. He has
okay.
control over one shoulder, so he
Hmm.
can move his chair around, but other
Yeah,
than that, that's about it. And he told me that being a quadriplegic is very painful.
it can be.
That blew my mind because
Hmm.
I just assumed, as I'm imagining a lot of people just assume, when you can't move, you can't feel. And that
That's
is
not
so not the
accurate.
case.
Yeah,
Oh
you
my
feel,
goodness.
and it's different. It's altered. A very good friend of mine, I was his live-in caregiver while I was in the LVN program,
Hmm.
and when I went back to get my RN.
Hmm.
I was his live-in caregiver, and when he would say the words, "I need you to trim my fingernails," I would want to scream and run out of the house because it was
Yeah.
traumatic for both of us. Because his injury is in, it was just a little bit lower than Linda's injury was, and I want to say it's
Mm.
C5, 6, and 7. So he
Okay.
had more control over his arms, um,
Yes.
but he has no fine motor. In fact, his hands are contracted into fists. And
And
so,
that's exactly what, same with Matt. Yeah.
yeah. So he still feels pain in his hands. And he can feel that pain just from somebody touching the wrong part of his finger. Like, I can't come up under his finger, pull it up to trim it. I have to lift it up from the sides. It's There's no rhyme or reason.
It just is the way the nerve has moved.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, and he complains about tremendous pain in his legs, and his legs, they don't seem to do it as much as they used to, but they'll spasm, and it'll be like he's almost running in place in his chair,
Wow.
and it's pain is what he says he feels, and it's like a phantom pain that he's feeling in his legs. So some of the signals are still
Yes.
getting through, but most
Right.
of them are getting mistranslated and garbled.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, uh, yeah.
We have not gotten very far at all, but I think this might be a good place to stop for today. We
Okay.
will bring you back again and
Hmm.
we will continue on that story, like what you've told so far today, culminating in the story of Linda. Beautiful story of Linda. Tragic, tragic story of Linda, but showing how you developed your passion for nursing
Hmm.
and what you had to do to get there. Like just the process of having to work that much harder than
Yeah.
somebody else because of a learning disability, right? Which
Well, what I
people don't
discovered
realize.
with that is that I just took it in small bites. So
Right.
I knew what coursework I had to do. I took one class at a time at first, especially with the math.
Yeah.
Math was the
Yeah.
first thing I took. English I could
Right.
do, in my sleep. I'd never have
Right.
any issues with English, but yeah, the math, I had to do just that. Microbiology, just that. Chemistry, just that. And
Yeah.
so it was like a creeping slowly towards getting into
But
the program, but I.
you had persistence
Hmm.
and character and the courage to use it. That is so important. All of that is so important. I'm really
Thank
proud
you.
of you. Like I
Thank
can't
you.
tell you. This is That's big. Yeah. All right. So we will have you back next month.
Okay.
Does that work for you, or would you prefer
Yeah.
something sooner?
Let's say next month for now, and
Okay.
then if the mental health fairy decides to come and visit me and bop me on my head with her wand, and I'm feeling better, maybe we can
We
move
could
it
do it
up.
earlier. Yeah, I have a couple. I have a couple that are available yet for this month,
Okay.
but yeah, July we will talk about a date, and
Okay.
yeah, I your story is fascinating. It is like with Linda. It may seem like just little bits that aren't that big, but
Hmm.
for somebody who needs to hear it, it's huge. So
Well, she impacted
thank
me.
you. She's impacting the rest of us, having impacted you. Like
Hmm.
this with the whole thing with the lifeboat. The ripples are the
Hmm.
channels that have flown out
Yeah.
from there, and I'm one of those ripples.
Hmm.
And you are
And
one
I
of Linda's
appreciate you for
ripples.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you. But you are one of Linda's ripples, and I am proud that my channel can be a small ripple from her as well.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Alrighty. So everybody, I will see you again on Tuesday. No, sorry, Thursday, when we will be talking to Crystal about Crystal's part 4. It's going to be recorded because I am going to be traveling
Oh.
about 6 hours away to
Hmm.
meet for the first time face to face my sister Tanya. So,
Fantastic.
yes, I'm very excited about that. So, yeah, Thursday will be a recorded, but please do come, please do comment, please do all of the YouTubey things,
Hmm.
like, share, subscribe. Make sure you're subscribed if you want to be subscribed, because if you hit the bell for all alerts, you won't get unsubscribed.
Right. And
So that's
make sure you
that's a
do
trick.
that. It's better to do that, I've found, either on an internet browser or even the mobile apps, at least on iOS. If you try to do it, when I've done it on my Roku TV, that's when I was finding I would later be unsubscribed.
Oh, okay,
So I
okay,
don't do that
good.
anymore.
Awesome, good point. Okay, thank you very much. I will see
Mm.
everybody I will see you Tuesday next week, but we will have Crystal on Thursday. I'll talk to you
Okay.
later, everyone.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye.